Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the State Champ Studio. Elizabeth Coon here with Emma Kuehl online. Hey, we got to give a shout out to those Blue Devils. Unfortunately, you guys fell short, but what an incredible season. You got to be proud of this team.
It was a great season, a great year all in all. So I'm really proud of how the team performed, and we're looking forward to getting back there next year. A little bit of a rebuild going on over the summer, but can't wait to get back on the field with the Blue Devils.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the best time of the year. Playoffs, we're getting really down to the nitty gritty. So we want to talk about a couple of teams that you think are going to have a good playoff run. We're kind of late in the season. Hazlitt, they've been really kicking it up a notch coming into this last stretch. They had a big win over Forest Hills Northern Eastern. Just talk about your thoughts on this team and how you think they're going to make a run.
Yeah, so they've been in my top 10 for the entire season thus far. And, I think we were waiting for kind of a signature win from this group, which they got over Forest Hills Northern Eastern. And looking at their scoring lines, their defense is phenomenal. I don't think that any team has scored more than 10 goals on them. And their defense is anchored by Kylie Pastor, one of the best goalies in the state right now. I'm looking forward to seeing their postseason run. I think that we'll see a semifinal appearance from them as we get a little bit further into that postseason.
Absolutely. Exciting stuff. We're excited to keep following their season. Marion, a team we haven't mentioned too much this season, but a team that you really see some potential in heading down the stretch.
Yeah, so Marion has been kind of under the radar for the past few years. They did have a fair amount of semifinal, and I do think even finals runs, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Their offense is putting up some great numbers, and I know that they have some really young talent. And I believe they earned the second seed within their region for the regional postseason. So, I do think Country Day will come out cleanly in that group, but, hats off to the coach there. Really put in a lot of work with that young group, developing the program to take them into, a solid postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about a program that's on the rise, just been having a really great season, Grand Blanc. What are your thoughts on them as they head into kind of the toughest part of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. They've been a team that I've been following for a little bit. And again, have had kind of a tough run of it in the past few years. However, this year, they're having a winning season. They've had some signature wins. So it's a young squad, it's a young program, but I think the coach there is really enthusiastic, and obviously the players have bought into the system, and it's a really great group of athletic lacrosse players. So I'm excited to see where they are, not only at the end of this season, but heading into the future. I think they're building a really strong foundation. So I've really enjoyed kind of keeping tabs on their progress this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these teams, it's that nitty-gritty part in the season. How do you find that little extra drive, that push to really come out and play your best lacrosse?
Yeah, it's tough. You're getting into the part of the season, it's getting hotter. The injuries might be popping up here and there, a little bit more wear and tear. But you keep your eyes on the prize, and that is to get to Ann Arbor in that first weekend in June, and seeing what you can do with your squad. So, whether it's getting past the first round in regionals or making it all the way and winning the state championship, you can set those goals for your team. And just really encourage the girls to go out and play their best.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of teams that have been playing their best so far heading down the stretch. Hazlitt, we talked about them. You really think that they're going to have a good run in the playoffs. They actually moved up in your rankings to number 8. They've been in your top 10 all season long, but they're starting to inch up a little bit closer.
Yeah, again, like I said, we're waiting on that signature win, and I think the win over Forest Hills Northern Eastern was a big deal for them. Again, their scoring lines. I mean, against Forest Hills Northern Eastern, I believe the score was 14-1, which is crazy in our
Mhm.
sport. Lacrosse is a high scoring sport, so obviously their defense is clicking right now. So looking forward to seeing how they respond, as they get into that postseason in Division Two. And again, I think that they'll, make an appearance in that state semifinal.
Yeah, and East Grand Rapids, a team that we have talked about all season long. We've given them so much credit. They are going to take over the number 3 spot again. But again, those middle teams in your top 10, you're saying this is just great competition. They could really move at any point still this season.
Yeah, so the 3 through 8, 3 through 9, really, it's any week could be anyone's game. So, again, our West Side friends play really tough schedules. They play each other all the time. I mean, it seems like they end up playing each other at least 4 times in a regular season. So,
Mhm.
any of those games can end up on, it's a flip of a coin, basically. So, really tough schedule. I look forward to watching all of those teams as we head into the postseason. Really tough regions to come out of. I saw that EGR is in the same bracket as Grand Rapids Catholic Central. So, I think we might be seeing a new face in the state finals. But looking forward to seeing how all of those teams compete. And again, 3 through 8, it's really any day could be different. So,
Yeah.
hats off to the level of competition within that group.
Yeah, absolutely. And does that give them, a little bit of an edge? Like you said, they play these teams multiple times throughout a season, have so much time to really prepare and, have another stab at it maybe in a couple of weeks. So, like, what kind of edge does that give them moving forward?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great observation. I think it's they're battle tested.
Mhm.
They've played the best of the best. They're ironing out the kinks in their system, what works, what doesn't work. And they get to figure that out a little bit sooner than maybe some of our other teams that don't play as hard of a schedule. So, I think it's a delicate balance between managing the wear and tear on the student athletes, but I do think it allows them to really step up their game in terms of, what they need to do in order to prepare for the final stretch.
And the Catholic League finals start tonight in the Cardinal Championship. Ann Arbor Father Gabriel Richard will be taking on Liggett. Ann Arbor Father Gabriel Richard got the win earlier in the season, 21-7. So, what team do you think is going to come out on top this time?
I think Gabriel Richard will come out on top. 21-7 is a really hard, scoring line to overcome.
Mhm.
It was earlier on in the season, so I'm sure adjustments have been made. But yeah, we'll look for Ann Arbor Gabriel Richard to take that division.
And in the Bishop Championship, Marion is going to be taking on Mercy, and Mercy got the win 13-10 earlier in the season, a little bit of a closer one. So, which one do you think is going to take it when it all counts?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to say Marion's going to take it. I think their offense is clicking. They're putting up some great numbers. And last year they had a really good run in the Catholic division. So, it should be a really, really solid matchup. I'm excited to see what happens. I know Mercy is anchored by Mackenzie Conway in the cage. But it should be a really good matchup. But I'm gonna give the nod to Marion on that one.
All right, I love it. Let's see if your predictions are right next week. Excited for the best time of the year, playoffs, everyone. We're going to toss it to Sean Baligian now.
Thank you so much, girls. Great job as always, doing a fantastic job. Now it's our turn, and we're going to get right to it. A very special guest joining us right now. Not only is he the head man at Okemos, but talking about one of those great events that, Coach, you and I were talking about last week on the show. We want to start telling people not only about the great lacrosse action happening all over our great state, but some of the events happening as well. Who better to chat with than the head man, Mike Van Antwerp, kindly joining us on the show. And first of all, Coach, really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be able to be here.
Hey, so this is one of those events, Coach, that Coach Durham and I were talking about last week. There are a lot of great events and lacrosse giving back almost on a weekly basis around our state. Tell everybody, if they aren't aware, about Eli's project. This is just awesome.
Yeah, thanks. So Eli's project was started up here in Okemos a couple of years ago when we had one of our students who took his own life. And so his dad started this, the Eli's Project Foundation. He was a classmate of a lot of our kids and a good friend of theirs. So it's really a way for us to kind of honor him and a way for us to give back to the community. And a lot of it's just about awareness for these kids to them. There's people who care about them. We get them talking, just a little bit about their feelings and letting them know that, that there are people out there and people who support them, which I think, always it's a tough time of a kid's life as they're figuring themselves out. And so we want to provide as many resources as we can. And we love to be able to do it with a local school and just kind of get the word out to as many people as possible.
And Coach Durham, you and I grew up in an era where, let's be honest, and I'm not trying to sound cool when I say this, it wasn't cool to talk about things like this. You had to bottle it up inside and act like a tough guy. I think that's one of the good things today as we've moved on as a society, that we're having an opportunity, and Eli's project and coach are allowing the kids the opportunity to say, hey, listen, it's okay to talk about things if something's bothering you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And like Mike's an educator, I'm an educator. We're both educators. We deal with this on a constant basis now. I mean, it's just that our society and everything's a lot different, and we got to make sure that, kids are okay mentally, that they have somebody to reach out to, and they can look forward to a mentor like Mike or anyone in the community that can help kids, get through their issues and their problems. And I think this is a great cause. And, I look forward to seeing it more often and grow as we get better, and maybe even grow throughout the whole state and even like the whole Midwest and community. It's a great project. And congratulations, Mike, on getting that going.
Yeah, thanks. We're really fortunate to be able to do it, and we've got some families involved who just make it a really fantastic night for everybody involved, and they get a lot of sponsors locally and stuff, and put a ton of work into it. And I think it's probably one of the most important things we do as a program.
Mike Van Antwerp kindly joining us, of course, the head man in Okemos. Before we talk about your team, how can people be a part of this, Coach? You hear something like this, and I think it checks the boxes in regards to just being a human being, let alone being a part of the lacrosse family. But how can people be a part of this? How can they help, so to speak, this great endeavor?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways. One, you can go to elisproject.org and check out the foundation and give to the foundation. That's always a great way to do it. To me, the bigger thing that everybody can do locally is just make sure that we're giving some attention to kids and understanding the struggle that they go through. And like you said a few minutes ago, that was kind of stuff that wasn't talked about before. And kids are lucky that now people pay attention to stuff like that and know that there are resources. And sometimes in the competitiveness of a game and a sport, you get wrapped up in the success or lack of it on the field, when really it's about these kids and developing them as people, and them knowing that there's resources and that there's things bigger than the game. I think that's just a huge message for them.
How are things going with your team this year? Beautiful facility up there, Coach. Every time I drop my daughter to Michigan State, I drive by and say, man, they got it going on in Okemos right now. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask how your squad's going this year.
Yeah, it's, I'm blessed that I have just an incredible group of kids and families that support our program. We're kind of dealing with some lower numbers in our upper ages. So I've just got 5 upperclassmen on our team. So we're dealing with a lot of growing pains of some youth, kind of game immaturity and stuff. But, they're working through it. And our last 3 games have been overtime games. We finally pulled one out last night. But just kids that are making mistakes that you make when you're 14, 15, 16 years old. And, they're only going to get better for it. So I'm lucky that they're just super kids to spend time with. And so, even with the ups and downs of a season, I'm glad to be out here coaching in the rain and, whatever it is.
Coach Durham, anything for Coach Van Antwerp before we let him go and thank him, obviously?
No, I mean, he's got a great program. It was a tough loss for us this year. That was a one-goal game. It was a pretty great game, pretty exciting game that we played. But I always like coaching against Mike. He's a great guy. He's one of the better guys in the business. And, hey, congrats on everything, Mike, your success. And, hey, anything we can do to help you guys with the Eli project, we're here for you. So thanks so much.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the time, guys. It's always great to talk with you.
Of course, Coach Van Antwerp, elisproject.org. If you want to be a part of it, it is a great endeavor. This sport continues to give back, continues to grow in this state, and certainly it's because of fine gentlemen like our guest, Coach Van Antwerp. Coach, continued success to you. Best of luck. If we can do anything, don't be afraid to ever hit us up.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
All right.
Yeah,
The
thanks,
head man at Okemos kindly joining us here. And Coach Durham, listen, we put our money where our mouths were, right? You know, we talked about some of the great events going on, and this came across the bow, and we said, hey, we got to tell people about this. Just a great endeavor.
Right, and I know there's more things out there. We're not going to go through the whole list, but we need to know about these things because we want to share it with the community. That's what this is all about. That's what State Champs is about sharing experiences for young athletes, whether it be a fundraiser for Eli's project to help make kids more aware of of mental health. Whether it's the old days when I was at Northville, and then I know Sean Dickin really wanted to get involved with that, and he was definitely involved when I was there, and then he became the head coach, and now he's just involved with other activities that are helping out Northville's community, and he's just one of those guys that gives back to the community all the time. And we, I know in Clarkson they do Stick It with Cancer or Stick It to Cancer, and those type of things that we're giving back to the community are just so huge for students to get involved with, and it's what we need in sports every day.
No doubt about that. Hey, we also need to take a look at the updated rankings. Coach, it's never easy to update these rankings, but while we have a second, always like to remind people we like to combine Division I and Division II, and there you have it. Our rankings for this week in the great state of Michigan.
I like the rankings. I know there's a couple changes. I think next week we're going to probably try to break down 1 and 2 again because the playoffs start. But this week, here we are. I just played Brother Rice last night, and they're a machine. Now, here's what's crazy about Brother Rice CC right now. They're banged up. Playing Brother Rice, I know 3 of their starters are out. I think they might even be out for the season, but they still are just dominant with all the players. They just reload. Let's have somebody else fill in the spot. CC's the same way. They're banged up. I know that for a fact. Talking to their coaches, but they're 1 and 2 still. Country Day is playing really strong. They had their first loss in a while since they played CC at the beginning of the season. They played Carmel out of Indiana, which is one of the best programs in the Midwest. They're playing really well. They have some talented players, as we'll see. Grand Ledge, I'm going to leave them right where they're at. Rockford's right behind them. Forest Hills Eastern, people, you got to watch out for them. I had a conversation with their coach, one of the better young coaches in the game this now in Michigan. He used to teach in Birmingham. That's why I kind of have a really good relationship with him. Awesome coach. They are on the rise. They've beaten a lot of teams on the west side. And then you got Heartland and Lake Orion. Like I said, they're right next to each other. Heartland beat Lake Orion a while ago, like maybe a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to leave them ahead of each other. And then we got Matawan, who was 10th last week. They move up a spot. And then Byron Center is going to sneak in there. And what's funny is those 2 teams are in the same region. And I'm really excited to see what happens with that region because that'll be a game that I think we're going to have to go see if both those teams get to the regional final. But overall, it's tight. It's getting better and better. And with Brother Rice and CC losing some players to injuries, it's just going to narrow things down a little bit too.
It's a good problem to have, and it's a good problem to have when each and every week it's an arduous process to try to update our Warrior Player of the Year list. Well, it's a good problem to have as well when each and every week it is an arduous process to whittle it down to 10 in our Warrior Player of the Year. Coach Durham, we said there would be changes. There are changes coming. Of course, you can be a part of it. Just go to our website. Let your voice be heard. The vote leader never gets removed from our list. Automatically gets into the Final Four. But, Coach, let's talk about those changes.
Yeah, a couple changes. Nothing major. I think the two guys that we pulled down could easily be back up next week. It just, it's like I said, it's still a fluid list. Nobody's out of it. We'll just have to see how they play. And right now is important because this weekend there's some big games that are going to be on the slate. And it's really about players to stand up. For example, I was looking at one player. I'm like, man, he hasn't performed as like I thought he would. And then all of a sudden he lit it up. And so like, I can't take him off. You have to keep competing. You have to keep playing well. And that's what we're talking about with our committee. Hey, we can't take players off that continuously, can perform every day and every week.
Some big games this weekend as well. I'm going to tell you again before we get into that, make sure you go to our website, let your voice be heard. We live and die by our criteria, but a big part of that criteria is the leading vote getter. He doesn't leave that list, automatically gets into the Final Four. So make sure that you are part of that and make sure that you're part of the upcoming action. There are some massive games in state this week. Coach, let's take a look at some of the games on the docket.
So right off the bat, I think, on Friday, Notre Dame Prep at Forest Hills Eastern. I like to see that game. I think Friday's got some solid games. I don't think there's anything that's going to be standing out like over the top. Okemos at Rockford, that might be a tough one. But, Mike, I think his team's playing pretty well. Rockford's a really good team. We know that for a fact. The Rice CC game number 2, we talked about this. Both teams are banged up. Both teams are ready to go against each other. It's anybody's game. They've had some tough wins, tough losses. They've only lost out of state other than CC losing the Rice the first time. Like I said, it's best rivalry in the state. Doesn't matter what sport it is. Here we are in the game of lacrosse, number 1 versus 2. Let's go, And then I think, East Grand Rapids at Grand Ledge. That's an interesting game. East Grand Rapids has been up and down. I like to see them do well. You always got to like a crosstown rivalry. Rochester Adams at Stony Creek. That should be a good game. And then, Monday is kind of like the end of the season type of stuff. I saw EGR is again playing Byron Center, who's, that west side of the state is really kind of it's a crapshoot over there. I mean, I know you have Division I and Division II teams playing against each other, but you'll see what happens with that. And then the KLAA championship, it's Heartland versus one of 3 teams. I think one is Livonia, Plymouth, or Salem. Maybe Northville's in there. And then finally, we have our last game, which I think is going to be great. Finally get our starting goalie back. Clarkson at us. Looking forward to that Monday night, and that's going to be the end of our regular season until we start playoffs next week.
Looking forward to it. Some great action. Good luck to you. Good luck to everybody else out there as well. That's going to do it for us. Until next week, my name is Sean Baligian saying thanks so much for joining us here on the State Champs Network.
State Champs Faceoff and The Draw is presented by Lawrence Technological University. Be curious, make magic. Faceoff and The Draw is also brought to you by the Michigan High School Athletic Association, promoting the value and values of educational athletics. The Michigan Army National Guard, a proud sponsor of the MHSAA. Warrior Lacrosse, Michigan-based, Michigan-built. Visit warrior.com. And the Detroit Athletic Club Foundation's Michigan High School Male and Female Athlete of the Year Award.